Hey everybody, this is JDGaming back today with what's likely going to be the last deck profile prior to Link format. I'm revisiting Psychics one last time because I found a very fun bit of synergy with True King Lithosagym, the Disaster, and a few other cards that really allow us to take the Banished Psychic theme into a different direction. Some of you guys may remember my Teletoon Synchro deck where I use Curry Bandit to load up the graveyard with a bunch of level 2 monsters and then bring them back with Telekinetic Powerwell to make a string of synchro plays. Well, nowadays with our emergency teleport limited to 1, it becomes even more important to have some way of bringing back our psychic jumpers and, our other level 2 tuner monsters. So Telekinetic Powerwell does a good job, but with Bandit being so slow, I was always looking for new options, and lo and behold, the all-star of the new dinosaur deck happens to have a ton of synergy with our psychic monsters because of its Earth attribute. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at this deck. As usual, I will be doing a let's build type of thing, so you could stick around for that. We'll go by, just my reasoning for why things are in here. It'll give you a little more insight into the inner workings of the deck. But if you just want to see the alphabetical profile that's typical, then you can go ahead and click the timestamp link in either the description or the comment section down below. That will be available for you so you can see the end, and then if you have any questions, you can always come back and see my logic throughout the video. But let's get started. So, as usual, we need to start off with what exactly are we trying to accomplish with the deck. And now, of course, we are down to the lone emergency teleport, and that's the unfortunate thing. But those of you who've seen this card in competitive play prior to getting hit for Cosmos, Super Quantums, and all that stuff may remember this is a quick play spell that lets you go and summon a level 3 or lower Psychic from either your hand or deck, and it gets banished in the end phase, but pretty much it's never going to get banished because you're going to get your monster as Synchro, Xyz, or other material, or otherwise put it to use. So it is really the all-star of this deck. Unfortunately, we don't have access to it anymore, but we do have some substitutes. So there is, as I mentioned briefly in the intro to this video, Telekinetic Powerwell. So this card basically is like Soul Charge for Psychics for level 2s. They're all quick play spells as well, and essentially it says you can special summon any number of level 2 or lower Psychic type monsters from your graveyard, and you do take damage equal to the total levels of those monsters times 300. So generally you're bringing back, level 2 Psychic monsters because Recover's okay in like a pendulum heavy format, but unless you're facing metal foes and things like that all the time, you're not really going to get a ton of value out of it in the main. So I stick mainly with the level 2 Psychic monsters, and it basically lets you go and make a bunch of synchro summon plays off of that. Here you can see that we'll need to load the graveyard with enough monsters, so we'll get to that. And then going along with that, we will be playing a single copy of Soul Charge as well, because it pretty much has some more restrictions in that you can't use your battle phase, but you can have any monster come back. Not just level 2 Psychics, it can be, whole Synchro monsters as well. So this is our overall theme. These are our spell cards that unlock our power plays and let us do what Psychics do. Another couple of cards that are really key to the Psychic theme are these two right here. So Overdrive Teleporter is a tribute monster, can't be special summoned, which is a bit unfortunate because if you could, there would be so many ways to abuse this card, but you have to tribute summon him essentially, and then you pay 2,000 life points to special summon 2 level 3 Psychic monsters from your deck, and it can only be used one time while it's face up on the field. So it's very interesting in that it is kind of like a locked level version of Emergency Teleport. You get 2 level 3 Psychics, no choice in changing the level or anything, unless you're playing Rise Spell, but that's a tech card that's not the best to draw, especially in an Earth variant like this deck. So we're just going to stick with the teleport because essentially it lets us bring out copies of cards like Hush Psychic Cleric, and that basically lets us go and discard a card from our hand to the graveyard to target one of our fallen Psychic monsters like Ghost Ogre, who always goes, with its own effect. And then if this Cleric hits the graveyard for any reason, Synchro Summon, Tribute, Battle, whatever, you get to go and revive whatever was banished off of that effect. And the cool thing here is because you have Overdrive Teleporter bringing out 2 guys, you can easily put the 2 of these together, and then if you have, a level 2 Psychic monster in your hand or in your graveyard already. You can always just use Cleric, to set that up if you have a Psychic already. But essentially, you set it up so you get a level 6 Synchro play, and then that lets you go for a level 2 alongside your Psychic Nightmare, let's say. And then, of course, on top of getting effects of cards like Esper Girl to net a free card, you get powerful level 8 Synchro monsters, including Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon is an option as well. So, these are all cards that kind of help with this synchro climbing aspect. And then, as you can see, if we are able to implement the telekinetic power well further, then it becomes even easier getting access to level 2 monsters. So that's all fun and good, but exactly how are we supposed to get our monsters to the graveyard? Well, best option that I found in recent time is basically Brilliant Fusion. This you've seen in so many other decks. It lets you fusion summon a Gem Knight from your extra, basically from using cards from your deck. And so if you use Seraph Knight, you get to send a Gem Knight with a light monster, which we can use any of the level 1 or 2, preferably 2, Psyframe gear tuner monsters, and basically that will be a target then we can start reviving with Cleric. We can revive with the we can summon with Emergency Teleport or bring back with the Telekinetic Power Well, so ends up being not so dead of a card, and it helps kickstart our combos. Another thing is, because when we bring out Seraph Knight, we get access to both double normal summon, which is phenomenal in this deck, and it itself serves as potential tribute material. You essentially get this scenario where resolving one Brilliant Fusion lets you go for the Overdrive Teleporter. You get out your 2 guys from before, and remember that I mentioned when you get this, you get the Ghost Ogre out, and then you get the Hush Psychic Cleric out. You just wanted that too. You already have the Epsilon right there, and so this sequence lets you go, just off of these 2 cards, you have a Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon play ready, and that can turn into any other level 8 if you so choose as well. And the final key cast member that we're introducing in this incarnation of Psychics is, as I mentioned earlier, True King Lithosagym the Disaster. So it's a level 9 worm monster, 2500 attack, 23 defense. It's pretty solid in terms of a free monster. And essentially, if it's in your hand, you can destroy 2 other monsters from your hand and or on your field, including at least 1 earth monster to special summon this card. But you really want to try and destroy both earth monsters, because if you do, you get to look through your opponent's extra deck, and on top of all that knowledge, you get to get rid of 3 of those monsters permanently through banishing, as long as they have different names. It does have an ability to then revive a worm monster that's non-earth if you get your Lithosagym killed. Unfortunately, I looked at Yang Zing's, I looked at the other True Kings. They don't really fit that well in this deck, because you're not even pulling from the deck, you're pulling from the graveyard. So we don't care so much about that revival. But essentially, this becomes a combo enabler. You can go and yard any extra copies of Esper Girl you draw into your hand into the graveyard, and that lets you set up all of your plays with cards like Hush Psychic Cleric, which now you could see you could actually trigger off of killing with the Lithosagym if you so choose. Similar type of card, Silent Psychic Wizard, basically has the same effect as Cleric, except you don't have to discard, you just banish whatever Psychic you want from your graveyard upon summon, and then other than that, if he gets killed, synchroed, tributed, whatever, you get that monster for free, and it brings it back from the banish. So, you could trigger the Lithosagym, or Lithosagym rather, can trigger the Psychic Wizard, or set it up, whatever you would like. And we can't forget our classic floater for the Psychic theme. Serene Psychic Witch basically lets you go and tutor for any Psychic monster from your deck with 2,000 or less attack, as long as it gets destroyed and sent to the graveyard. And that summon happens during the very next turn. So if you get killed by a battle during your opponent's turn, let's say, you get it during your own turn. If you get it killed during your own turn with the combos of things like Lithosagym, though, you get something on your opponent's, or rather, the opponent's turn. And that can be very handy if you're getting something like Ghost Ogre to interfere with your opponent. So Lithosagym just has a lot of cool synergy in setting up and triggering all these guys. So now that we have that basis, let's go and flesh out this deck. So to create the rest of the main deck, we are going to play a full playset of Overdrive Teleporter, because this is our main monster, and there are a lot of ways to bring this guy out. We have the Brilliant Fusion that lets us go and bring out our Seraph Knight that's tribute material. We can go ahead and use Emergency Teleport, though it's limited to 1. It's actually quite nice if you're able to get rid of a level 2 tuner monster, specifically the Esper Girl, because then if you teleport this card out and then you do that play sequence, you get an Esper Girl for a free card on your way to the Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. So there's that. And Lithosagym itself is another set of monsters. So you have at least 7 cards with no setup at all that basically let you go and tribute summon this thing off turn 1. And it is the power play of the deck. I know there are cards like Solemn Strike and Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring that could really mess with this card, but that's one of these things where Psychics overall aren't the most competitive and stable theme in a long-term basis, but they do have a lot of power and fun, combos available to them if you use the Overdrive Teleporter, and that's really the type of deck we're trying to create here. We essentially need to play 3 Hush Psychic Cleric when you're running the Overdrive Teleporters, because there are times when you have access to your level 2s in the grave with Telekinetic Power Well, and you will just go and summon 2 Hush Psychic Clerics. No need to go for any tuners on alongside it. So that's basically why you need it, because Overdrive is such a big thing, and we're planning on dumping a lot of our level 2s to the graveyard for free with other synergy-related cards, synergy-creating cards, rather. You're basically not going to need to play... or rather, you're going to need to play 3 of the clerics. For some of our tuners, we will be playing just 1 Epsilon because, it is our light target here. But we also have triple Ghost Ogre. Originally, I was playing 2 Ghost Ogre and a Psychic Commander. That let me go like Naturia, Barkion, and stuff. But I found, that's a good thing to do maybe for the side deck. But Ghost Ogre is just too clutch these days. Even without people main decking 3 of these things for Zodiac, I would consider playing it in this deck because you can manipulate this card so easily. You can revive it. You could tutor it with Witch. You can do so many different things with this. And as a light tuner monster, you essentially set it up now where Brilliant Fusion can bring a level 3 back. That lets you go for plays like Trishula. It lets you go for a bunch of, basically add 1 level to any of your combos, and you get that off of the Ghost Ogre. Plus, by sending herself to the graveyard, she basically pulls double duty, slowing your opponent down when they go first, and then making all your cards live right out the door. We're playing double Garnet. It's a bit of a weird thing, I know. Normally I do play just 1, but I recognize, 15% chance of drawing it if you go with just 1 copy. If you go first or second, and then 12.5 if you go first. But the problem is essentially if you were to draw this, your Brilliant Fusions are all dead, and in a deck with so many cards that you don't want to draw, and just such a huge reliance on Brilliant Fusion, I want to make sure even if I draw Garnet, I'm able to resolve it. And with Lithosagym, that second Garnet isn't that scary in the first place because we can get rid of it to summon the Lithosagym, rip apart our opponent's extra deck, and Cleric always needs free discards anyway, so we can get rid of Garnet if we don't have a tuner monster that would be better off sent to the graveyard. So overall, yes, it does create a bit of an increased brick scenario, but I think in the long run it actually creates a benefit for the deck because you're able to play around that, and I'd much rather have, on occasion I draw it and I have to use it as the discard fodder versus, that 15 to 12.5% of the time I'm just going to draw the 1 Garnet and then all my Brilliant Fusions are dead. We're playing triple Esper Girl. Normally, I wouldn't think about doing this because you bring this out with cards like Serene Psychic Witch, but with Esper Girl being an Earth monster and being a free discard and, destruction target off of Cleric and Lithosagym, this card's actually quite good, and since it nets you free cards, if you're able to bring that back in a loop with any of your banished psychic monsters, it really does pull some very nice duty. We're playing triple Serene Psychic Witch because this is finally a card worth playing again at 3. I know that I have been including it at 3 in a lot of my decks, but it's been subpar a lot of recent formats because you're not able to reliably get it killed and then still survive if your opponent decides to just, get rid of it with some other card effect, or they decide to, just go all in and kill you through the Witch. But in this deck, again, free resource off of the Lithosagym on top of everything you could normally do with it in Psychic, so definitely justified in this build. We have double Psychic Jumper. This card, basically, it's a pretty good card overall, but without Teleport at 3, it's a lot harder to go and use its Creature Swap effect. So I did choose to run the 3 Esper Girls and 2 Jumpers because turn 1, you can't steal your opponent's monster with Jumper. You can draw free cards off of Esper Girl, so I felt this was the better pick just in general for this deck. You could still fetch this as needed. With the Witch, you can go ahead and revive it whenever you need with all of your recursive cards, so not any problem accessing this card and, letting you control your battles and pick your fights here, but still worth playing there. We will be adding, just the 1 Silent Psychic Wizard. I found this card's okay, but I don't like having to open with it, even with a Lithosagym, because if you use Lithosagym to set it up, you're not using Lithosagym to pop it. And essentially, mid to late game, this card's phenomenal because once you have a Psychic in the grave, just like with Cleric, you could go and bring back your Psyframe Lord Omega instead of going and shuffling it back with its own effect. You can bring back Psychic Nightmare. We can't bring back Teleporter, but pretty much we could do anything else. Bring back combo pieces, whole synchro monsters with this card. And as a 19 beater, it's fairly strong as well. But a similar type of card we'll be using is Crane at 2. Basically, this lets us take advantage of our Ghost Ogres that we could send to the grave real easily, and it lets us go and make synchro plays. It makes Break Sword that gets rid of Brilliant Fusion for free pluses. Overall, it just lets you make a lot of plays, and it really does open up Trishula plays as well. It synergizes with Serene Psychic Witch because even though her effect is negated on the field, you could just go and kill her with Lithosagym, bomb both of these, get the effect of the Serene Psychic Witch, and rip apart your opponent's extra deck in the process. Just a lot of combos with this card. And then Double Card Trooper kind of goes along with that. This is a new thing I'm trying in this build. I loved this thing in Grand Soul Psychics, but I haven't really found a reason to play it since. It goes along with the Serene Psychic Witch. When you're able to kill this card with Lithosagym, you get a free card in the process so you don't lose out on advantage. It's a pseudo 19 beater, can attack over things, so with that you have a pretty good amount of muscle with Garnets, Wizard, and Card Troopers. And then the ability to mill 3 cards. You have so many monsters in this deck that you're going to load up for your Telekinetic Power Walls and Soul Charge and Crane, and all these other psychics very quickly with the Troopers. So fun card here, and since its milling thing is a cost, one of the fun things I always like is that it does work alongside Crane, so we'll put that there. And then finally for Psychics, it's just a single side blocker. This card has seen play in some side decks, but basically you call a card, it essentially prohibits use of that card at all, so you can't use it as material, you can't attack with it, change its battle positions, whatever, but it's easily maneuverable because it's a Psychic. You can bring it back with these guys, you can tutor it with Witch, a lot of things you can do. Only thing is in this deck, it is a wind monster, and you can use Lithosagym to pop non-earth monsters, but let's be honest, if we're losing 2 cards in the process, even if we kind of recur, one of the cards, we really do want to make sure that we get full use out of Lithosagym's disruption effect, and so Side Blocker just wasn't the best card to maximize on in the main deck. You can go ahead and play more in the side, definitely recommend it. Helps you get around any type of problem that you may need to, but just one is safe and easily usable, and then consider adding more in the side as needed. And then the last 3 cards in the main pretty much is Maxi here, another Earth monster, still a very nice hand trap to go along with your Ghost Ogre. I mean, there's not really much to say about it. Maxi's amazing when you draw it, so definitely worth playing. We are playing the Raigeki because this deck does swarm quite nicely and you're able to go and push for game on a clear board. And then new tech that I'm playing in the main, Dark Hole along with the Raigeki. Essentially, having a pair of these really does increase your chance of clearing your opponent's boards before you start your turn, especially if you go second. And because there's so many cards in this deck that float, your Psychic monsters pretty much all float, Dark Hole is an extremely safe option. It just helps get rid of problematic cards before you invest anything, because this deck is so combo-centric, you really want to be able to catch up to your opponent if they've gone off. You don't want to have to, one-for-one when your combos get canceled out by stuff. So, Dark Hole really just clears all the annoying cards like Dark Law, Crystal Wing, Zodiacs, and you essentially are able to make your plays before you lose out too much. So that's why that's in there. And then it's finally time to finish up with the extra deck and fleshing that out. So we have, at level 5, I'm going to play these 3 right here. So Naturia Beast doesn't need an introduction on my channel, but essentially you have all Earth monsters, at least maneuverable amounts of Earth monsters. So you're very easily able to bring this card out. Locks your opponent out of their spells, which prevents them from setting up. It's just an all-star. Best synchro by far, but it's not generic. You need the Earth. So these 2 are your generic requirements. TG Hyper Librarian lets you get free draws off of strings of synchro summons created by Soul Charge and Telekinetic Power Well, as well as your floating psychic effects. And the Magical Android's a cool thing because, her effect is pretty much you gain 600 life for each psychic. So, I guess you could get a bunch of life for free, but the real secret of this card is it's a level 5 synchro monster. So if you use this card, you can bring back like a Ghost Ogre through your other floating, get a Crystal Wing with it or whatever, and then if this thing is killed or you use it for material, it is a psychic monster you can bring right back using Silent Psychic Wizard, Hush Psychic Cleric, etc. So it is basically a maneuverable piece of synchro material because of that psychic status. So very fun manipulations you can do with that card. And I don't know, so far it's been okay. It's like it's more theoretical than anything, but it really depends on how many games you play as well and what your opponent really is allowing you to do. But I don't know. So far, it hasn't really been too disappointing. At level 6, in addition to the Psychic Nightmare that basically lets you go and look at your opponent or choose a card from your opponent's hand, reveal it. If you call the correct type of card, monster, spell, or trap, you gain an attack. We have Bryanak basically because we need a generic card. This lets you get rid of all of your dead psychic cards. So even if your opponent strikes you, I mean, you have all your 2s loaded up, and then you could just go Telekinetic Power Wall, bring them back. If you have anything on the board already, which is fairly likely with all the floating ability of this deck, you're able to go ahead and make a bunch of synchro plays now that your opponent's strike is gone. So that's why Bryanak is in here. We have Black Rose at 7. This essentially is the only 7 I found was worth playing. I considered playing the Seraph Knight with the level 2 for Crystal Wings, or sorry, Clear Wing Synchro Dragon or something, just as like a passive level 7, but I didn't think that was necessary because a lot of the time you do that, you can just use your double normal summon. You have a lot of 3s in the deck, and if you have the 2 that you would have turned into a Black Rose with that Gem Knight, just go for a 5 next to it instead, like make a Naturia Beast or a Hyper Librarian or the Magical Android. So I decided to invest more 5s than 7s, and Black Rose is still great because, again, like Dark Hole, everything floats in this deck. So if you're able to clear your opponent's board that's fragile and get free cards off of it, you're in a really great spot. At level 8, on top of Crystal Wing, which doesn't need introduction, we have Omega and Scarlight. Essentially, Omega is even better in this deck because, you reveal cards that you can hit with your Psychic Nightmare. It comes back very easily, but you can actually just recycle this card through your psychic effects. You don't have to return this shuffling cards away. I mean, that does happen sometimes. You may get like an extra use out of Seraph Knight or something, but just the fact that it's a 28 body, hard to kill, and if they kill it or you use it as material, you just get it right back through your floating, makes this even better than it is in other decks. And then Scarlight I basically added because I felt, at level 6 we have Bryanak to clear problems, we have Black Rose to clear problems. At 7, at 8 I was trapped. Unless I could go Crystal Wing, I couldn't deal with an established board, and so Scarlight is to really deal with that. Similar thing here, you basically get to blow up all the special summon monsters and deal damage, but a lot of your guys will float anyway, which unfortunately does miss timing because you deal damage after it's killed, and it is a when you can effect. But your Hush Psychic Cleric, your Silent Psychic Wizard, Card Trooper, those things don't miss timing, and so you're able to get some advantage off of those things if you've specialed them, and then, the floating monsters can bring entire synchros and whatever combo pieces you need back, so you'll be able to continue your plays. It's basically a very good power card I felt was a good addition to this deck that I don't know why I wasn't really exploring before. At 9, we're playing the Mighty Trishula along with Vermilion Dragon Mech. Crane really opens up this guy, but if you have your Overdrive Teleporter, you have a 6, and you can easily bring out a level 3 tuner. That lets you go for this. This card basically lets you go and banish any tuner monster in your hand, field, or graveyard, your choice, to destroy any card on the board. So that can combo with your own guys, popping off your Wizard and your Hush Psychic Cleric to go and bring things back. But it also lets you just, do spot removal. If this thing dies, you replace it with a Ghost Ogre that you banish, so then you can hinder your opponent even further. So overall, it's just a useful card to have as an option in case you don't have anything else brewing. Leo is our level 10. This basically, you're playing Psychic Jumper as a level 2 tuner that lets you swap with your opponent's monster. And so many decks have level 8 boss monsters. If you just trade that, you sync the vulnerable 100 attack position or 100 attack position Psychic Jumper with the 8. Make a Leo. It's usually a better monster than just leaving it sitting duck there. And then we have Star Eater. Basically, this is in here specifically for Lithosagym because if you have a level 9 and you have all these level 2 tuners, you can make this thing. It dodges things like Solemn Strike, though technically I guess it is true that you would lose the Lithosagym to the strike, but I don't know. There'll be weird scenarios where it'll come up, and this card will end up being useful. But basically, once you've used Lithosagym as an enabler in this deck and maybe disrupted your opponent, you don't have any use for it. It's just a 25 beater. So I'd rather have a 32 Wrecking Ball that can't be touched by a lot of the opponent's cards. It's just a safer investment. Plus, even if I lose a tuner, if I bring it right back with Telekinetic Power, well, I'm not losing anything. So that's why Star Eater's in here. We already talked about Seraph Knight, so essentially the last card here is Phantom Knights of Breaksword. I tried playing with this, or without this, for just a little bit, and I found when you're playing Crane, you want this card, because yes, your Witch doesn't float with this because it doesn't get destroyed. Your Hush Psychic Cleric doesn't get sent to the graveyard from the field, so, you know, it breaks that connection there. But you have Crane, and essentially when you're trading just Crane for free removal, and this card can go get rid of dead cards like Brilliant Fusion or trigger your other floaters that we just mentioned, it becomes a worthwhile piece of tech, gets you out of some annoying situations, and I definitely recommend, especially with the reprint, you know, pick one up if you want to play this strategy. If you watched the video in its entirety, thanks. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching the creation of this deck as much as I did putting it together and testing it out. Let's start off with the main deck now. So we start off with double Card Trooper, double Crane, triple Esper Girl, triple Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, triple Hush Psychic Cleric, Max C, triple Overdrive Teleporter, Psy Blocker, Psy Frame Gear Epsilon, double Psychic Jumper, triple Serene Psychic Witch, a single Silent Psychic Wizard, and 3 True King Lithosagym the Disaster. Then we have double Garnet, triple Brilliant Fusion, Dark Hole, Emergency Teleport, Raigeki, Soul Charge, and triple Telekinetic Powerwell for a 40-card main deck. And then our extra consists of course, 15. We have Magical Android, Naturia Beast, and TG Hyper Librarian at level 5. We have Bryanak and Psychic Nightmare at level 6. Black Rose is our lone level 7. We have Crystal Wing, Synchro Dragon, Psyframe Lord Omega, and Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend at level 8. Trishula and Vermilion Dragon Mech at 9, Leo, Keeper of the Sacred Tree at 10, Star Eater at 11, then we have Phantom Knights of Breaksword is our lone rank 3, and we have Gem Knight, Seraph Knight for the Brilliant Fusion play.
That's the end of the video. If you enjoyed, please like it so we can share it with as many other people who may enjoy it as well. If you want to see more of this series, you can click the annotation you see on the right, or if you just want to see the last video I did, click the annotation on the left. And if you really liked what you saw today, then I invite you to check out the channel icon in the middle to subscribe to JDGaming for more weekly videos. Thanks guys, this is JDGaming, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.